I'm Robbie Hearn. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Standing on Giants, and we help brands around the world develop their own online customer communities. So we do that for a whole bunch of brands, telcos, energy companies in the UK, in Europe. For instance, we run Airbnb's global host communities is one of the things that we do. My personal background is, all about the customer, all about customer experience. First half of my career, corporates here and in Australia, and second half of my career, the more interesting part for me personally, startups. And the last 10 years, I've been just kind of obsessed with the idea, with the potential of online customer communities and how do you make them work for the benefit of the business. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that whole theme of online community, for the last 15, 20 years, we've all understood in digital how important that is. But do you think at this very moment we're at this change in business and culture and economy that we're looking at, do you think that there's a particular role for online communities now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the need that has been there has just probably 5x'd in the last 3 months, and it literally is like that. If you look across our client base, we're seeing 300, 400, 500% increase to those customer communities. We're seeing an influx into our sales pipeline of companies interested in developing their own communities. And we're seeing the depth of what people are doing in the communities broaden because, as some of the first speakers said, we're not going back to the old ways, right? So I do think a lot of things are being accelerated. And I think the need for companies to have a great digital experience is more important than ever. And putting your customers in that is going to be fundamental, I believe. The companies that do that well are going to thrive, and the ones that don't are going to get left behind.
Okay, Robbie. Well, look, I'm going to hand over to you because I'm keen to hear more about what's going on. But for everyone else who's listening, remember to pitch in with any questions you have. Don't wait to the end. Pitch him in that chat area. Any questions, observations you want to share with Robbie, anything you'd like to ask him, feel free, go for it. But yeah, Robbie, over to you.
So I've explained Standing on Giants and what we do. I do like to have sources for stuff. You can see it this morning. I saw this on my LinkedIn feed. I don't know exactly who did the survey. There was a survey of the Fortune 500 CEOs that popped up on my LinkedIn. I thought it was brilliant, right? A couple of things relevant to today. I think a couple of speakers, when are we going to go back to normal? No time soon, right? A lot of these questions had the result never. But you look at this activity level in the economy, these business leaders are not expecting us to return anywhere near, even next year, right? So we are looking at a landscape for the future that is going to be different. And we've already heard some of that this morning. Second thing I think was asked maybe by you, Clive, at the start, right? And we had the poll, is the current situation accelerating transformation? The clear view from the world's business leaders is yes, it is. And I see that in everybody I'm talking to as well, is things need to happen quicker. If you had a plan, you need to make it happen now. 75% of these CEOs are saying that. And the last one, most relevant to me, my mission, Standing on Giants, and what you just asked me, is this move to stakeholder capitalism. So for anyone who hasn't heard that phrase, I'm sure you probably have, but this is a big personal driver for me. I firmly believe that business can be a force for good in the world, and that capitalism has lost its way slightly in the last 50 years. This drive to short-term profit has crippled people's mental health, it's crippled the planet, and the next generation of consumers are just not going to put up with it. So this move to stakeholder capitalism, where businesses have a triple bottom line of people, profit, and planet, has been around for a while. I was talking about it myself last year. That's such an incredible statistic here, that the business leaders, even in the big corporates, the dinosaurs, are saying this pandemic is going to rapidly accelerate this move to stakeholder capitalism. Right? And that's where communities play an absolutely fundamental part. As soon as you accept that the role of your business is not just to serve the needs of a tiny bunch of shareholders, but the society you're embedded in, you need a way to connect with that society. And you need to recognize that one of the biggest stakeholders in your company is your customers, right? And so when you're planning your digital transformations, and I thought the first presentation was brilliant, by the way, just in terms of covering the vastness of the landscape there, right? It's so important, I think, to retain a view of not only how the things you're going to put in affect your customers, but your customers can actually be part of the transformation, right? You can involve them in your business in ways that you didn't think were possible, and you will see fantastic rewards if you take that type of approach. I'll talk quickly about giffgaff because it's super relevant here. For those who don't know, I was part of the team that set up giffgaff back in 2009. I was employee number 6. And I designed the front end of giffgaff, so the customer experience. And we were the first company in the world, first mobile company in the world to go 100% online, 100% digital from day one. So no call centers, no shops, everything had to work online through a community. And the first year was really touch and go, right? I mean, this is not part of the public record. Now giffgaff's a really well-known brand. It's one of the top telcos in the UK, 5-year winner, Which Award, $500 million in revenue, on and on and on. In the first year, we almost got shut down. We were a month away from being shut down. And what saved the business was not anybody in the business. This was the real eye-opening thing for me. It was the customers, you know, the members, we actually called them, who we had been building a relationship with since 3 months before the business actually launched. And one story really sticks in my mind. You know, anybody on this call will know that if you don't do the basics right, it doesn't matter what you do on top of that, right? If you're not delivering your product and service, you're finished. And for a brand new brand, it's absolutely essential. And we weren't doing that, right? The network just wasn't working. We were losing customers. They couldn't call. We lost customers' numbers when they ported, and we couldn't fix it. And the community was going crazy. And then one weekend, I remember it was in about the middle of 6 months in. One of our top members on the community, who was a retired glider pilot called Andy Zero, right, that was his username. He took it upon himself to spend his whole weekend in his car, driving up and down a 10-mile section of the M1. And he would stop every mile and make calls on 4 different phones using text, data, and SMS, you know. And he would record the results in a spreadsheet. And he did that for I think about 10 hours across the 2 days. And then when he came back, he sent all the data to the network team. And the network team at OT said that, you know, this is fantastic. We're actually able to pinpoint something that's gone wrong in our MVNE layer in this mast, and that will unlock the problem on the network. You know, that type of thing happened a lot at giffgaff, you know, and I'd never seen it before. And it's what happens when you really, really engage customers authentically. You know, you can get so much out of them that you would never expect. So I think when people today talk about building communities, they want that type of engagement. And the trick is, how do you get it? Right? And what I've learned over the last 10 years is it isn't one thing, it's 5 things that you need to be doing. So 5 things when you're planning your digital transformation and you're thinking, hopefully, about putting a customer community into the mix, right? For all those strategic reasons, it is so important that you plan for 5 things and not 1. The common path is to plan for the technology. There are 5 other things, and I like to try and talk about this now as a sea voyage. It's partly, you know, because I was inspired by the great explorers of the golden age, you know, Ernest Shackleton, Christopher Columbus, Captain Cook. You know, going on these journeys is always very kind of romantic to me, right? But it's a good metaphor, I think, probably for a digital transformation, right? It's not a one-stop shop. It's not one thing. It's lots of things over time. And for a community, that's absolutely true. So we want to put ourselves on a boat and we're heading out, right? And our destination is that thriving community where we've got people like Andy Zero doing amazing things for your company. How do we get there? The first thing is you must have internally a clear sense of purpose for your community. Now, this doesn't have to mean something flaky and new agey or even a triple bottom line purpose, right? It just means, why are you investing in this asset and what return do you hope to get from it? So it can be completely linked to a traditional business model, But the important thing is that you must have one, right? One of the biggest mistakes I see when we go into clients who've got communities that aren't working is that they've got no idea why they've got a community. We went to a client recently that I won't name. That was the problem straight away. They had a video to explain the community. In the video, I counted 21 different purposes for that community. Okay? People don't respond to that in a good way, right? If you give people 21 choices, they'll just freeze, right? So you must have a clear purpose. In our ship metaphor, that's the destination, right? Shackleton didn't, achieve all his glory by getting in a boat one day and thinking, I think I'll just go out for a little cruise around, right? He knew where he was going and why he was going there. And when you look at great communities out there, I would urge you to look at people like Monzo, for instance. Look at Lego Ideas, right? Two communities with a super clear purpose, right? That is clear to the people in the community and clear to the business, right? There has to be two sides to it. So Monzo, come and tell us how you want the new banking products to look like. Very clear. And then it's super clear to the business why that's important, right? There's so many people trying to be challenger banks. What products do the customers really want? Which ones are really going to cut through? Doing that with your customers in an authentic way that's built into your product development roadmap, is a real no-brainer. But very few banks have done it as well as Monzo. Lego Ideas. The community turned Lego around from the 90s, where it was losing $500 million a year, to become one of the most profitable toy companies in the world. And Lego Ideas today is still a brilliant community. You go there, you submit an idea, it goes through a very clear process, it's voted on, it's taken internal, does it fit the brand? It comes back, 6 months later, your Lego product can be on the shelves and you get a tiny micro proportion of the profits. So it's all linked up, it's all clear, and that's because it has a singular purpose. So for your community, please know why you want one. Is it to take cost out of the business, for instance? Is it to help bolster the brand, or is it to develop new products? Or is it something else, even more innovative and creative? But just know what it is. Don't launch a community with 10 different purposes. The second thing is what we call a community owner. This is like the captain of the vessel, right? The one who's in charge, the one who makes sure that the ship is fitted out correctly and has the correct resources and the correct staffing and stays on track. Those are all metaphors that I'm sure you'll kind of resonate with when you think about digital transformation. It's very easy to lose sight of where you're going, to drift off track, to realize you haven't got the right things. This chap is, obviously in his senior years, right? And I think that would reflect the fact that you want a senior person in this role, someone in your business who's a strong operational person, who's got good relationships, who can actually, make stuff happen in the business. So clients we have where communities are working, they've got a nominated person who does this, right? You don't need it full time to start off with. You probably need someone who can do it 5-10% of their time, moving up to 20% of their time. But this role is really, really important, especially in a crisis like we're seeing now. So for instance, with Airbnb, we have links to, the CEO -1, the head of customer experience, the head of customer comms. And those people we were talking to regularly during the crisis and advising. And then they were going back and saying, right, we need this to happen in the community. We need that piece of information. We're going to communicate in this way, right? That link is super important. And a community in a crisis can be one of your best assets. If it can focus all the heat that's coming at you into one place, it can show customers that you're listening, and it can feed answers back out in a super, controlled, regular, and very, very cost-effective way. But only if you've got a clear owner in the business. If you haven't set that up, it's very difficult to kind of retroactively do it when the fire is burning. The third thing is contribution, which I would say is probably the most mystical of the elements, in that it's not something that's commonly understood. So some of these words will probably already resonate with you. Contribution is something that we've realized over the years is absolutely fundamental and is all about what is the business offering to the community, right? If you think about a friendship, any personal friendship, if it's only one person turning up, you know, one person saying, let's go to the cinema, that friendship will die, right? And many communities that are launched by businesses fail for that reason, because it's only the customers turning up, right? The brand never turns up. The brand just thinks, oh, they'll take care of it. Well, they won't, right? They need energy, they need information from the business. And that contribution can take many forms. You can be really creative here, right? But it takes time and it takes commitment and it takes resources from the business. So to get it right and to make sure it happens, you have to know what your purpose is, right? So for instance, in our ship metaphor, Shackleton's going to the Arctic. He needs to equip his ship with bear skins, you know, with rations, with skis, with huskies, right? Very, very different than Captain Cook, who's going to the West Indies, right? That stuff's not going to be any good. He needs completely different stuff on his ship, right? So your brand, to contribute effectively, must know where it's going and why. And then you can marshal the time and the resources you need to regularly be putting stuff into your community. So that is contribution. Fourth thing, this is the community manager, and in our ship metaphor, this is the bosun is the closest I could get to it, right? I certainly didn't know what a bosun does, but if you could think of somebody who's very hands-on, right, and they're on the ship and they're just making sure that everything works. So they're sorting out stuff that's going wrong, they're fixing leaks, they're making sure the cook's got right stuff, that disputes are settled. Community management is a vastly underappreciated skill set. Typically, when we talk about community management to new clients or people who are not familiar with community, they may have an idea of what a community manager is, and it will typically be something like, oh, well, yeah, we need someone to make sure that there's no naughtiness in the community, right? That swearing is taken out. So it's a very kind of reactive role. That is necessary, but it's probably less than 5% of what our community managers do, of what a community manager needs to do to get engagement happening in your community. So a survey of this room would probably find anyone who's been in corporate communities or any type of branded communities, a lot of them are dead. They are just not, there's nothing happening, right? And that is a mixture of a failure probably of all the elements, but the community manager is probably one of the most significant or the easiest to fix, right? And again, you can think about the community manager in another way, like the host of a party. A party's not just going to happen, right? You need a host who's actually doing things, who's stimulating stuff. In our business, an interesting stat that will bring this alive for you is that our community managers work full-time on their communities. We pick native language speakers for each language that we operate in, because you need the cultural references. And the stat I think that may resonate is that those community managers spend about 95% of their time communicating in private, right, with people in the community. At the surface, the community needs to look like it's all the community members, it's all the customers doing the participating, because that's what attracts more people, right? And that's what people want. They don't want to go to a community where there's nothing to do and nothing to say. But it's like an iceberg, and underneath that iceberg, there is all this work going on by the community managers to nurture relationships, to stimulate activity, to resolve conflicts. So you must plan and resource for a community manager role, and understand what skills that person needs to have. Really, really critical. And then the last element, which is critical from a facilitation point of view, is the technology. You must have a platform. You must have something that the community is going to run on, something that will integrate with your website or your app. And the reason I put a cruise ship here, right, is because it's so easy to overspec this element, right? You don't need a cruise ship, right? What you need is a platform that does the few things that are really important to people in a collaborative community, right? If you have too many features, people won't use them. It's wasted money and it confuses the experience, So you just need a platform that does what is critical. What do the community managers need? How is your contribution going to appear on the platform? What purpose are you actually trying to solve? Once you know those things, nowadays it's really easy, I think, to choose a platform. There's more platforms out there than ever, right? And I put it last because in terms of a thriving community, it is the least important, and it's worth making that point because many people go into this type of exercise thinking that platform is the most important. Right? Time and time again, we've seen clients where they've run an RFP and selected a platform and even put it in, and that platform is just dead as a dodo, right? There is absolutely nothing happening. And that is because they haven't thought through all the other stuff, right? If you think through all the other stuff, you can make your platform decision in 5 minutes, right? I'm exaggerating slightly, but it's easy. And the last thing I would say on the platform is, if you're serious about community, right, for these strategic reasons, stakeholder capitalism, delivering value to your business, right, build the community on your own website, right, on your assets, on your app, right. Don't try and create this type of community on any type of third-party platform, on any type of social media, right. There are huge numbers of reasons for that, but strategically it's really simple, right? You don't own those platforms, right? You don't own the experience, you don't own the data, you don't own anything about it, right? Zuckerberg owns it, or whoever owns it, right? And those platforms are run for those businesses' interests. So you can be strategic and use social media for what I would think of as the periphery of community engagement. They're very good for things like awareness building. But if you're serious about making community a part of your future, a part of your customer experience, a place where customers feel heard and can contribute to what you're doing, there is only one way to do that, right? You need to build it in the heart of your business, right? And actually in the long term, that is a lot cheaper for you. It's a lot more operationally cost effective. And it gives you so much more leverage strategically. You know? So that is a quick whistle-stop tour of the world of community and the 5 things you need to avoid.